Chapter 3. Hasley. I was acting so proud of Zev. Our little argument had been louder than I thought, and even though I didn't like fighting with him, it bothered me too much that he had that attitude towards the boy. Maybe he had his reasons for acting that way, but his attitude wasn't the best to warn me about the blonde. I found it funny how Luke had only spoken to me and created a pissed-off Zev in just a few seconds in the same scene. I was exhausted as soon as the social studies teacher announced the end of today's class. I dropped my pen against the table and put everything away. My notebook got tangled with my bracelet and I rolled my eyes and then tried to fix the little accident. I wasn't so successful, as the instant I pulled my hand away I got a scratch on my skin. I was complaining more than usual today. I left the classroom. It was my turn for literature and then with Teacher Kearney. The nice thing about the classes was that there was a short 10 to 15-minute break. I was pacing the hallway. The boy from the day before and the culprit of my fight with my best friend was there. I approached him. "Aren't you supposed to be in class?" Luke asked. "You guess right, but I didn't feel like going in." I shrugged. Luke looked at me as if what I had said was the strangest thing in the world. He pulled a pack out of his pocket and then took a cigarette to his lips and lit it. He settled down on one of the bleachers and stretched out his legs. The sky was blue and the air was still cool at the temperature we were in. "So, Luke, why do you like to smoke?" I asked, sitting down next to him, pronouncing his name slowly as I looked at him with some uncertainty. "Wow, you know what my name is," he laughed and took a puff. "I didn't have much trouble," I admitted. "Now answer my question." He looked at me hesitantly. "Don't expect me to answer all your questions, Weigel, but I smoke because I like it. It takes the stress out of my body." Yes, that's what most people who use tobacco used to answer. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing different than expected. There are other ways, you know, have you tried? I tried to invade more on the subject. "Yes, and I don't want to," he said in a sullen tone. "You're completely unreasonable," I retorted. He just shrugged his shoulders. I sighed heavily. It wouldn't be that easy to find out more about him, it wouldn't be at all. I watched him for a few seconds. I liked the way he dressed. He was wearing a blue plaid shirt and under it a black t-shirt, which caught my attention. It was a triangle and on one of its sides there was an iris like a Rio iris. "What does it mean?" My index finger pointed. He scanned the direction and raised an eyebrow at me again. "You don't know?" he asked incredulously, and I denied, pursing my lips. "God, what are you? Is that so important?" I replied. "That, it has a name and it's one of the best bands that ever existed. It's Pink Floyd and the picture you're looking at is from one of their albums," he defended. "Have they already split up?" I questioned innocently at his tone of voice so aggressive in his words. "What's wrong with you?" He blinked a couple of times and looked at me for several seconds. "You can't talk to me. You can at least try to tell me what genre they play, maybe I could listen to them and—" I couldn't finish because he interrupted me. "It's not Michael Bublé." Luke twisted his eyes. "Michael Bublé is good," I defended, squealing with a frown. "For Christmas seasons," he said hesitantly. "Now I'm outraged," I said and looked straight ahead. My mind worked quickly and I looked back at him in confusion. "How do you know I like him?" "You hum a song or two of his in history." He let out a little smoke. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. It wasn't that my voice was the best for singing and he already knew it. "That's embarrassing," I mumbled. "How do you know him if you're not supposed to like him?" "I can't like something without first tasting it, in this case hearing it. Actually, though, I know it because Mom plays her Christmas songs in December," he confessed, smiling languidly. "My mom does too." "Great," he said and flashed me his thumb. Was that sarcasm? I was silent, not knowing what else to say. Luke looked at me. I gave him a confused look on his face. He was thinking, He put his hand in his pocket and pulled out a spiral notebook with a black cover. On the same cover was a white box with something written on it that I couldn't read, because he had already opened it looking for a page. I could see that it had stripes, drawings, and obscene words. Luke stopped on a list and hesitated whether he should show it to me, but in the end he agreed. My hand held it and my curious eyes began to read. "That's a lot of bands, but I only know John Mayer," I said with a smirk. "That's what I thought." He got up and threw the cigarette on the ground and then crushed it. He put everything in his backpack, slung it over his shoulder, and started down the steps. I looked at his back in astonishment. Did I say something wrong? I quickly got up and followed him, trying to figure out the reason for his unsuspecting and abrupt behavior. "What are you doing?" I asked when I was next to him. "Getting away from you," he answered dryly. "Why, what did I do?" I spread my palms at my sides. Luke stopped and looked at me. "John is a great singer, but I'm offended that you don't know anyone else on that list," he said incredulously. "Not even Green Day." "This can't be real." "Maybe I've heard a song by them," I gasped. "I'm not a fan of heavy music." "It's not heavy music, Weigel," he paused, waving his fingers in exasperation. "To me, everything loud is." I bellowed, tapping the sole of my shoe. "Well, you're heavy because you're so noisy." "Hey," I exclaimed. "You need to light your way to really good music," he inquired. "You're rude." "It's rude to criticize other people's tastes just because they are different from yours." He ignored me and continued walking. I couldn't believe we were arguing over music. "Ask me about someone else," I insisted. Luke turned around. "Let's see. Coldplay?" I looked at him for a few seconds, trying to remember something. Zev had talked to Dylan about something, though I don't know if it was really about music or if they had been planning something and it was just a plan. I never paid attention to his talks. I would from now on. I bit my lip. No, I didn't know. "Is he a soloist?" I asked hesitantly. "This is kind of creepy," he sighed as if he was tired. "They sing the intro to Scooby-Doo. The little dog who discovers mysteries." I shouted excitedly. "If I were Zev, I'm sure you wouldn't be my best friend," she snorted. That offended me. I held my hand to my chest, trying not to make light of his comment. "Zev isn't, though." "What do you know?" "Maybe deep down he wants to lock you in the janitor's cellar." She pursed her lips to keep from smiling. "He can stand me," I confessed. And it was true. Zev could stand me and I could stand him. That's how our friendship worked. I heard him mutter something unintelligible in an ironic tone. We walked on in silence. I didn't ask or utter anything again, and he didn't bother to speak either. Luke didn't flinch at telling me more about the bands he listened to, but, from what I could make out, he really loved that band on his shirt as well as others. If I wanted him to open up, I would have to put up with his talks full of musical culture, or at least know something about it. We were walking around most of the institute, so I had missed the literature class with Professor Hoffman. That would get me into trouble. However, I tried to overlook it. We reached the bottom of the stairs and he stopped and turned to me, holding his gaze on mine for a few seconds. "Stop looking at me," I groaned uncomfortably at that. A curve tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Why?" he asked. "Because it's uncomfortable," I answered, and he gave me a jocular look, as if the mere sight of me like this amused him too much. And maybe it was. "What a princess you turned out to be, not even if you were Letizia Weigel." His eyes wandered to the sleeve of my blouse, and what had started as an innocent laugh turned into a loud guffaw. "What the hell happened to you?" In my defense, the people walking down the main hallway should know better than to walk around with food, and also that they are very rude, I announced, trying to cover the stain with my hand. "Or you should be more cautious," she smiled. "You are very clumsy." "I'm not clumsy," I defended, "not when this." "Shut up, Weigel." Luke looked at me hesitantly when I didn't mention anything. I furrowed my brow and averted my gaze to the watch adorning his wrist. As I focused, I noticed a scar lying on it. Was Luke self-harming? The scar ran from one corner of his palm to the other end diagonally. I could tell it was about 6 or 7 inches long and was a faint pink that stood out against his white skin. Apparently, the boy realized I was watching him, because he quickly pulled down the sleeve of his shirt, causing me to lose eye contact with it. I searched his eyes and looked at him in confusion. His face was tense. I wanted to ask him, but I was aware of the large sign on his forehead that read a clear "Don't say a word." "You'd better get to class," he spoke, breaking the awkward silence that had formed during that staring scene. "It's our turn together," I said, reminding him that he was also supposed to attend. "I'm not going in." He responded without any desire to make an effort to lie, as if he really didn't care about all the repercussions his lack of interest might bring. "You can get noticed." Possibly he didn't want to go in because he was afraid she might ask him about the mark on his wrist. Or keep irritating him. "Anyway, I'm already a hopeless case." He shrugged. For some reason, his calling himself that made me feel sad. I wasn't supposed to have those thoughts about him. "Come on, after 5 minutes he won't let you in." "Fine," I agreed. There was nothing I could do. He had already spoken and I wouldn't force him to show up for class. I started walking up the steps, looked over my shoulder and he was still standing.